1398, 5:30 a.m., Delhi, India. The city breathes a heavy, uneasy fog. Smoke from smoldering rooftops curls into the pale sky, mixing with the scent of sweat, fear, and the first hints of cordite from fires long before the sun rises. A distant horn echoes through the narrow streets, a low, trembling sound that carries the promise of death. You can almost hear the creak of the city gates before they shudder under the pressure of Timur's advancing horde. Horses' hooves strike the cobblestones like a death drum, and the air vibrates with the metallic clang of armor, swords, and screams that will soon follow. Timur, the scourge of Central Asia, rides at the forefront, his eyes scanning the maze of Delhi's walls. He is not merely a conqueror, he is a master of fear, a tactician of terror. He studied not only armies, but the human mind, exploiting panic as a weapon. Chroniclers note that his army carried detailed lists of prominent citizens, traders, scholars, men, women, children, marked for execution with ruthless precision. It is said that Timur himself oversaw some of these deaths, not from necessity, but from calculated spectacle. You feel it even from afar. The city itself shudders beneath the weight of impending annihilation. Amid the chaos, you see a merchant clutching a child, eyes wide as the first arrows pierce the morning mist. Such accounts, preserved in the fragile pages of history, are fragments of horror that most textbooks omit. And yet, they are the keys to understanding the method behind Timur's madness. He did not merely conquer, he erased, he impressed his dominion into the very minds of the living. And here is the hidden question that lingers as you watch this unfold. Why does history remember the victories, the cities taken, but so often forget the methods so meticulously engineered to terrify, to obliterate? What elite calculus justified the obliteration of entire neighborhoods, the impaling of leaders in public squares, the extinguishing of generations in mere hours? Before we descend further into this suppressed truth, pause and take note of your own presence here. Subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. I need to know who hears this. This story will challenge what you believe about power, fear, and survival. And what follows is not for the faint of heart. By mid-morning, Delhi is unrecognizable. Smoke thickens, curling through the shattered minarets like dark serpents. The smell of charred timber and scorched flesh hangs heavy, a pungent reminder that Timur's conquest is not only of land, but of psyche. Soldiers move with mechanical precision, their boots crunching over broken tiles, over debris, over bodies left where they fell. The first screams echo from narrow alleyways, short, sharp bursts of terror that ricochet off stone walls. You hear them and you feel them, as if the city itself is crying. Timur's execution methods are not random acts of rage. According to a diary kept by a soldier in his army, the Khan watches the screams. In some squares, impalement is carried out with grim artistry. The victims are chosen for visibility, for the psychological ripple through the streets. Others are bound and buried alive, their muffled cries a grim symphony of warning. Timur understood something many rulers ignored. Fear spreads faster than an army. And in this understanding, he wields power that transcends the battlefield. You see it in the faces of Delhi's defenders, the young boys pressed against walls, their eyes wide, trembling, tasting panic in the air. The merchants who had once trafficked in silk and spices now flee with nothing but dust in their mouths and terror in their veins. A recently declassified file notes that Timur ordered city leaders to witness selected executions, a calculated mechanism to ensure obedience through horror. It is a lesson in domination, one designed to etch his supremacy into memory itself. Even the soundscape of the city becomes a weapon. The clash of metal, the neighing of horses, the occasional whistle of an arrow slicing through air, all orchestrated. Timur's lieutenants coordinated with almost surgical timing, driving civilians toward pre-prepared killing zones. By the hour, entire districts are cleared, not merely subdued. And as you observe this from the shadows, you realize that terror is not a byproduct here. It is the purpose. Yet amid the carnage, a sinister beauty emerges, the precision of destruction, the choreography of cruelty. Timur's actions, recorded in dispatches dated 1398, show a mind not only of war but of psychology. He is a master sculptor, carving obedience out of fear, leaving nothing but the memory of his method behind. By late morning, the streets of Delhi are unnervingly quiet, broken only by the occasional crack of a collapsing roof or the dull thud of a body hitting cobblestones. Dust rises in choking clouds, carrying the acrid stench of fire and iron. Timur's soldiers move like shadows, systematic, silent, ensuring nothing living remains to challenge the narrative of total domination. The city's pulse has slowed to a fearful heartbeat, each survivor a trembling witness to the methodical erasure unfolding around them. A surviving diary, kept by a court scribe who miraculously escaped, recounts seeing a square lined with stakes, men and women bound, their bodies arranged with cold symmetry. Timur rides past, nodding at his lieutenants. No word is spoken, the terror itself speaks. Each execution is timed, each act designed to ripple outward, ensuring that those who survive will never forget and will carry the fear long after the Khan departs. Even the city walls seem complicit, their crumbling stones echoing the screams in a haunting chorus. The psychological calculus of Timur's methods becomes apparent. Terror is a weapon as precise as any sword. According to archival letters later uncovered in Samarkand, Timur instructed that prominent families be spared only briefly, forced to witness the destruction of their homes and neighbors, then executed at intervals. This was not cruelty without reason, this was strategy. Every scream, every fire, every falling body is a calculated note in a symphony of domination. You can almost hear the whispering of the survivors in hidden alleyways. He does not merely kill, he erases. And it is here that the suppressed truth begins to surface. Timur's terror is not aimed solely at bodies. It is aimed at legacy, at culture, at the very idea of resistance. Every mosque burned, every palace gutted, every family impaled carries a lesson far beyond simple conquest. It is a warning written in blood. Pause and consider the orchestration. The hooves that crush, the flames that consume, the walls that bear witness. Timur's genius is monstrous in scale, yet intimate in effect. This is power molded into fear. And if you are following this, if you are truly listening, you must ask yourself, would you survive not just his sword, but the knowledge that all you love could vanish with deliberate intent? By early afternoon, the air itself feels heavy, saturated with smoke, blood, and despair. The city of Delhi has transformed into a theater of calculated horror. Fires blaze across districts, their orange tongues licking the pale walls as shadows dance like specters of the recently executed. You hear the metallic clang of armor punctuating the screams that persist, shorter now, more resigned, as if the city itself is learning to bow to fear. The stench of charred flesh lingers, carried on a faint wind, mingling with the acrid dust from collapsed buildings. Timur's methods are no longer merely physical, they invade the mind. Families are rounded into courtyards, forced to watch impalements, executions by fire, and the systematic dismantling of homes. Some witnesses later reported that the Khan's army would leave certain children alive, only to see their parents slain before their eyes, a cruel calculation designed to engrave fear into memory for generations. It is here that the psychological intensity of Timur's strategy becomes horrifyingly clear. Terror is layered, compounded, and cyclical. Survivors recount being herded through streets rigged with corpses, their smell, sight, and sound acting as lessons in submission. A recently declassified file notes that Timur ordered city gates left partially open after the massacre, allowing news of the destruction to seep outward, warning neighboring cities of the same fate. This was not chaos, it was an empire-sized lesson in obedience. Amid this carnage, the human details pierce through. The mother clutching a lifeless infant, the scholar shielding sacred texts while flames lick the edges, the merchant forced to trudge over the bodies of his former neighbors. These small betrayals, these moments of helplessness, are the very marrow of Timur's domination. He does not merely conquer, he dissects human fear and weaponizes it, ensuring that the memory of Delhi will haunt all who survive. And as you witness this from a distance, a chilling realization forms. Timur's greatest victories are not counted in cities taken, but in minds broken, in cultures bent, in obedience carved through terror. This is the suppressed truth few dare to confront. The orchestration of horror, the deliberate, systematic annihilation, reveals a mastery of psychological warfare centuries ahead of its time. By late afternoon, the city of Delhi is a landscape of obliteration. Streets that once buzzed with merchants, scholars, and families now lie silent, strewn with debris, ash, and bodies. The air trembles with the lingering echoes of screams, a haunting refrain of human despair that refuses to dissipate. Smoke curls from rooftops like dark fingers reaching for the sky, carrying the bitter scent of burning wood, scorched stone, and iron. You can almost hear the city's heart stop, the collective pulse of its people snuffed out by one man's will. Timur's execution methods reached their most terrifying form here. Archival accounts note that he did not limit his cruelty to combatants. Civic leaders, religious figures, and artisans were impaled, burned, or buried alive, not haphazardly, but in precise sequences. Streets are cleared systematically, districts erased with military efficiency. Timur transforms annihilation into an instrument of education, a terrifying lesson that reaches beyond the city, across kingdoms. The suppressed mechanism behind this horror is chillingly strategic. Timur's aim is not merely destruction, it is psychological domination on a civilizational scale. He understood that by leaving fragments of human experience, survivors haunted by what they witnessed, streets emptied but partially intact, homes scorched yet recognizable, he could engrave obedience into memory itself. A recently declassified letter from a lieutenant describes how entire neighborhoods were spared temporarily, only to be executed later, ensuring that the terror never fully lifts. Every action is deliberate, every death a calculated message. Resist, and annihilation follows. You feel it in the small human moments. The boy who steps over the body of his father, the scholar who watches his sacred text consumed by flames, the merchant who tastes dust where once there was sugar and spice. These moments are the emotional instruments of Timur's power, his mastery of fear as weapon. It is inevitable, as if destiny itself conspires with his hand. Delhi is not simply conquered, it is erased, reshaped, and marked as a cautionary symbol for all who dare oppose him. As you absorb this, remember your place in witnessing it. Like, subscribe, and share if you dare acknowledge the truth of power and terror. This is more than history. It is a study in control, in the darkest recesses of human strategy. Timur did not merely wage war, he authored the blueprint of systematic annihilation. Night falls over Delhi, but darkness here is not a comfort, it is a witness. The city smolders under a sky streaked with smoke, its towers jagged silhouettes against a dimming sun. The acrid tang of burning wood and iron lingers, a ghostly perfume of destruction that seeps into your lungs and memory. Recently declassified letter from a lieutenant describes how entire neighborhoods were spared temporarily, only to be executed later, ensuring that the terror never fully lifts. Every action is deliberate, every death a calculated message. Resist, and annihilation follows. Silence now dominates, broken only by the occasional creak of a collapsing wall or the distant whimper of those who survived. The streets are littered with the remains of a civilization meticulously erased, a city reduced to echoes of its former life. Timur departs, leaving behind not merely ruins, but a psychological scar on the land and its people. Survivors recount nights spent haunted by the screams, visions of impaled bodies etched into their dreams. Archival notes from a council record state that entire districts remained uninhabited for decades, avoided out of fear that the Khan's shadow still lingered. His method was not brute force alone. It was the orchestration of terror into a lasting imprint, a strategy that ensured obedience through memory that made history itself tremble. Reflect on the human cost. Families torn, scholars silenced, merchants and artisans vanished, a cultural and intellectual vacuum carved deliberately into the fabric of society. Timur's genius lies in its inevitability, the unbroken logic of fear, the precision of annihilation. You realize that what we often call conquest is merely the tip of a deeper mechanism, the shaping of civilizations through terror, the subtle art of psychological dominion, a lesson in power that is as elegant as it is horrifying. And here, in this final reflection, you sense the echo of the opening, the city gates, the creak, the scent of fire. Everything that began with anticipation ends in a muted, haunting silence. The same streets that rang with panic now speak only to memory, to the knowledge that power can be absolute, that fear can be engineered, that history can be rewritten in blood. This is the suppressed truth, the reality rarely acknowledged. Timur's greatest weapon was not his army, but the shadow he left behind. As the smoke settles, let this linger in your mind. Civilizations rise, but they can also vanish, methodically, deliberately, as a warning. And if you have followed this story to its end, remember to like, subscribe, and share. It is a loyalty test to those who seek the truth. The past is not merely to be studied, it is to be understood, feared, and remembered.